Let's make a start, shall we? Nice to see so many faces. Thank you very much for joining us, everyone. So here we are. This is the third event in our series, At the Heart of the Community, A Future for Your Church. Today, we're going to be talking about finding new uses, and that's exploring new, different, and multiple uses for your building. We particularly wanted it to be plural because quite often it's not just the one use that we're talking about. So I'm Sarah Pearce. I'm the Development Officer for Scotland for the Heritage Trust Network. Before we kind of go any further, hopefully everyone is fairly comfortable with Zoom. Please keep yourself on mute while we're here having the presentation, but then when we get to the Q&A session, then you can unmute yourself. Do keep your camera on if you're comfortable. It's lovely for us to be able to see you. And again, particularly during the Q&A, but do feel free to turn it off while we're having the presentation from Harriet. You can, as we say, you can change your name if you want to. You can add into the chat box and tell us where you're from. We are recording today's event. So our plan is that the whole recording, including the discussion, that will be sent to you afterwards and all the attendees who have booked on. But when we share it online on our websites and on YouTube and things, it will just be the presentation. So it won't be the chat or anything. That's not going to be shared publicly. So hopefully you can all feel fairly comfortable. We also use a software called otter.ai. So hopefully you can see that at the top of your screen. That is live transcriptions. So if anybody would like to, I'll just post that link into the chat box in case anybody doesn't have it. That's live transcript that's coming up just now. So if anyone needs the subtitles, if that would be helpful, then follow that link in the chat box there and you'll be able to access those. So first of all, today we're going to hear from our speaker, Harriet English from the Plunkett Foundation. Harriet's going to chat to us for about 30 minutes about the community businesses in places of worship campaign that they're currently running and that we're a part of. We'll then have a Q&A session with Harriet and then kind of allow the discussion just to roll from there. And we'd like to hear from you, hear about what you're working on, challenges you're facing, and see if we can help one another, essentially. So this event is jointly organised by Heritage Trust Network and Historic Churches Scotland. So we want to create a forum for any community group working with any church, whether it's still in use for worship or not, and from any denomination. So we want to hear from you. We want to hear about your challenges, your successes, the support that you need, the support that's maybe missing, so that we can feed that back into the sector and the partners that we work with. And just as always, our ethos is always, whatever you're doing, someone's done it before or someone's going through it just now, and there's an answer out there, there's support out there. So we always want to connect you to that support. So as I said, I'm from the Heritage Trust Network. I'll put our website address into the chat box so that you can take a look and see upcoming events and things. But for anyone who doesn't know, we're a UK-wide membership organisation for any group who are involved in reviving a traditional building for community benefit. So doesn't have to be listed, just has to be traditional. And whatever you're doing with it, as long as it's benefiting the people around you, then we'd love to help support you. We offer peer-to-peer support, events across the UK, and we have a huge online digital resource. So my post in Scotland is funded by the Architectural Heritage Fund. We've got Gordon with us today from AHF, who might say hello a little bit later. And that funding comes from Historic Environment Scotland, as well as the National Trust for Scotland. So all of those sector leaders, they're all involved in this and they're all supporting this. I'll just hand over now to Victoria Collison-Owen from Historic Churches Scotland to say hello and just give you a quick update as to what they do.
Thanks very much, Sarah. Yes, I'm Victoria Collison-Owen from Historic Churches Scotland, and we're an independent charity and a heritage organisation. We take into care nationally important churches and preserve them as historic buildings, but also look for sustainable uses for those buildings that fit with the heritage significance of them. We own 7 churches at present across Scotland, and the number is steadily increasing over time. But crucially, we also provide support and advice for other people to do very similar things to us very often at a community level. and we're here, very welcome to contact us at any time if we can offer you help or advice. Our principal funder is Historic Environment Scotland, and they support the work that we do and help us to support you in turn. Thanks very much.
Lovely, thank you, Victoria. We've deliberately kept our introductions really brief this time because we just want to allow lots of time for chat and discussion later on. So let's go straight into it and hand over to Harriet English. Thank you for joining us from the Plunkett Foundation, Harriet.
Hello, hi, good morning. Thank you very much for inviting me along this morning. It's lovely to see everybody and lots of faces. And I've already spotted Martin. I've spotted Martin Breathe, one of our advisors in the audience. So keep me on track, Martin. So I'll start with a tricky bit, which is sharing my screen, so bear with me. And once I've shared my screen, I can't see you, so if anything isn't going to plan, then if you could let me know, that would be good. So fingers crossed, share sound, got a little film in here, so there we go. How's that? Can people see the main screen?
Looking good. Brilliant,
excellent, we are off, so that's good. So as I say, lovely to be here today. And what I wanted to do was share a little bit about Plunkett Foundation. Hopefully Plunkett is a familiar name to some or many of us here today. Just share a little bit more about kind of what Plunkett does, what the community business model is all about, and then get into a little bit more detail around our places of worship campaign that we've been kind of leading at Plunkett for a few years now. So to kick off, hold on. So, hopefully, hold on, where has my, there we go. Next slide. Perfect. So Plunkett's vision and mission. So Plunkett, we are a national charity. We work with rural communities predominantly, all across the UK. And our vision is to create resilient, thriving, and inclusive rural communities. And we do that by working with community groups to establish community businesses. We believe community businesses are a way of inspiring and empowering rural communities to work together to find solutions to their needs through sustainable rural community enterprise. So it's quite wordy, but what we believe is that actually when communities are facing challenges such as losing their village shop or their pub, or if they want to take on ownership of a key asset, could be a woodland or a cafe, that actually the community business model is a really good solution, and it's a long-term viable solution. And what that means is bringing the community together to purchase and run that asset together as a community cooperative, really. So community businesses, they are enterprises that are owned and run democratically by members of the community on behalf of the community. So unlike kind of a worker cooperative, actually when a community comes together to own a business, they are running that and creating that for the wider benefit of everybody, regardless of whether they are a direct member or not. Of course, they are democratic, so they invite every member of the community to get involved, and it could be through purchasing a share, or it could be through volunteering or even working in the community business. Why are they so important? We know that they're so important because they, as well as protecting an asset or a service, which we obviously see decline in rural communities, they also at the same time address a range of issues, including tackling isolation and loneliness, improving well-being, and creating employment and training opportunities for everybody, and particularly for those that might fall outside of kind of mainstream employment or education opportunities. And obviously in the past 18 months, 2 years, we have seen how important community support is, and how where other kind of networks have maybe failed more vulnerable members of our society, actually we've seen community businesses step up and really support the most vulnerable at a time of obviously the pandemic. So they are very inspirational businesses. What does Plunkett do? So Plunkett, we are a charity, as I said. We work across the whole of the UK, and we've been running for over 100 years, although some days I feel like I've been doing it for 100 years. We were actually established by a gentleman called Sir Horace Plunkett, and he was an Anglo-Irish aristocrat, and he believed in, by bringing community together, you could address the issues that they faced. When we established as a charity, that was very much focused around kind of agriculture, because obviously farming and countryside was synonymous, but today obviously it's about those wider services as well, but we still believe that premise that by bringing people together, you can provide solutions. So our role is to champion and support community businesses. We are a membership organisation, so we encourage every community business that we support and are involved with, that they join Plunkett, predominantly for that kind of peer support, as Sarah has said, somebody or that whatever challenge you might be facing or whatever you might be experiencing, there'll be somebody out there who has experienced that or is going through that as well. And that's what we kind of like to bring out through our membership network, that peer support and advice and mentoring. As well as that, we also provide practical advice. I mentioned we've got Martin here in the Zoom room. So Martin is one of our very, very valued advisors who goes out on the ground to offer help and support and advice, and obviously his kind of personal experiences in running a community business. So we have both our central helpline here. So if you pick up the phone to Plunkett, you'll be helped by one of the team members, and that could be in terms of giving advice on governance or legal structures or how to run an AGM or fundraising. But we also, as we say, enhance that advice through our network of 50 or so advisors that are based throughout the UK. So our support is available to communities who are in the stages of setting up a community business, and also when they're up and running, because obviously the campaign to set up a community business is very different to running a community business, but we're there through the whole journey. So some groups we're talking to, it might be their first few days of looking at the community business model. Others might have been running a community business for 20 years, and the challenges are always different, but we are there to handhold and provide help and support at every stage. We also act as a voice in policy on behalf of rural community businesses. We try and make the landscape for setting up a community business as enabling as possible. There are lots of challenges, lots of hurdles, and as well as providing kind of that focused help and support and experience, we also try and influence policymakers and others to create the kind of most enabling the landscape as possible, whether that's funding or policy changes. So we keep ourselves very busy. What are the impacts on the local community? So I kind of touched on that for benefits of running a community business, but they are incredibly powerful community enterprises. And by bringing people together, not only are you seeing the long-term protection of a key service like a shop or a pub, but actually they go far beyond service provision, and they bring people together, create a very accessible, friendly social hub, which make big steps in overcoming isolation, particularly for elderly or those that might be living in a rural community without transport, for example. They're always very welcoming places that recognise when people need a little bit of extra help. Also, we provide training and employment, particularly for young people. Again, during the height of the pandemic, we were overwhelmed with the response of the network of community businesses in engaging with young people. So young people who couldn't go to school or couldn't go on to the next steps of colleges or university, that actually community businesses provided a lot of opportunities, whether that was paid employment or volunteer opportunities. So they could be a real leg up for young people in terms of training. Volunteering benefits the individual, again, brings people together. Countless stories over the years that I've been at Plunkett of hearing from volunteers directly about the difference volunteering has made to them. Many stories, sadly, of people who have lost maybe a partner or a family member, and actually volunteering gives a kind of a renewed purpose, a renewed connection to those around them, and has been, as some people put, life-saving for many to have that network at a time when they're grieving for a loved one. Also, just those practical benefits, and we just know people kind of really value that kind of additional purpose and additional connection to their local community. So for some, volunteer opportunities are always tailored. I'm thinking of one gentleman whose job was to get up early doors and put the newspapers out for their local community shop every morning, and he really enjoyed doing that. He'd be there first thing, and then actually when he'd done his job, he'd sit down, have a coffee and a chat, and that was his start to the day every day, and that brought great social benefits. And very much about community cohesion as well. Bringing a community together for a shared purpose is hugely beneficial, and as I say, kind of has that kind of renewed focus and really creates that vibrancy to living in a community. Also, we have seen so many examples of how community businesses address environmental issues. Obviously, we are all very increasingly environmentally aware, but community businesses tend to lead the way. So they are looking to source local produce, reducing food miles, reducing plastic, reducing waste, etc. So there's lots of positive environmental impacts. Many shops or groups that we've worked with, for example, have spin-off environmental projects where they might be planting a local orchard. I can think of one group in Reading who are doing that at the moment, and also providing additional kind of recycling and reuse for materials. So again, helping kind of reduce waste, whether that's food waste or kind of broader material or plastic waste that is harder to recycle. They are focal points in times of a crisis. Again, seeing during the experiences of the pandemic, it has been an absolute focal point and lifeline for so many people, but also where we've seen rural communities experience flooding or extreme snow or severe weather, when people haven't been able to do their usual route out of the village, and we do see those community businesses being the heart and the centre of ensuring people get essential supplies. And quite frankly, also in terms of kind of extreme weather, when these very rural communities are snowed under, there's a ready-made network there that is happy to check on the more vulnerable members of the community and make sure that they are well fed and kept warm, and also that they know that somebody is there to help them. So they really are focal points in times of crisis. Support hub for those in need. So we are seeing an increasing number, particularly again in recent times, community businesses taking on that additional role of providing a food bank or an IT hub, again bringing people together and making sure that when people need kind of extra help and support, they are getting that. We're seeing increasing number of community businesses engage with community fridges, for example, which again environmentally reduces food waste, but also increases access to good, healthy, nutritious food for everybody, without an assessment or without needing to qualify for that extra support. It is there and it's at a hub that people can go to and everybody can access. They also host just a huge range of community activities. Even in the past year, when kind of face-to-face activities have been reduced, we've seen community businesses step up and provide online quizzes, or book reading evenings or poetry events, again just to help keep people connected. And in terms of face-to-face events, they host an array of activities, whether that is a kind of a knit and natter group or a cafe or lunch club for elderly people. There's just a huge range of services that they can add in, and imagination is the limit. So we see all sorts of ideas every day. So we are particularly excited at Plunkett because a couple of years ago, we launched our Community Businesses in Places of Worship campaign. The team here, we were aware over the years that we were seeing a handful of community businesses set up and established in places of worship, and we really believed that there was great potential around bringing community businesses into places of worship for a number of reasons, to both support and maintain the fabric of historic buildings, and also create kind of greater connection with all members of the community, and provide a kind of practical central hub and premises for some of these community initiative ideas that were sparked that may be struggling to find premises. So of course, if there is potential to co-locate a community business in a place of worship, there's loads of mutual benefits for the community business. It's a really kind of central home, and for the place of worship, you've got a tenant or a partner there that is contributing to the overall running costs, can invest in the fabric of the building, can make applications for grant support that maybe the place of worship alone wouldn't be able to do, and you're also connecting with that wider community in order to make people aware of the importance of that historic building in the centre of their community. We see a lot of community businesses struggle to find premises, so knowing that there's an option there to work more closely with a faith group, then that does release kind of huge potential to see more community businesses set up and flourish. However, although Plunkett was seeing a handful of these community businesses set up in places of worship, we knew that there was big untapped potential, and therefore in 2018 we set about creating an alliance of partners who we hoped would also share this vision, and really pleased to say that we did find those partners. And so we have got an alliance of organisations, national stakeholders with an interest in faith and historic buildings that have come together and said, yes, we think there is potential here, and we think it's a great idea, and we will also share our kind of energies and expertise to help make that happen for community groups across all of the UK. We're aware that when it comes to setting up a community business in a place of worship, there are loads of intricacies and loads of complexities. Plunkett does not try and say that we know all the answers, and that's a huge reason for bringing that alliance together, because what we want to do is, where there is the idea and where there's the willingness and the enthusiasm to bring together a community business in a place of worship, we want to make that process as easy as possible. And we know that the complexities of setting up an additional kind of business or service in a place of worship varies dependent on which country you are in, and obviously kind of which diocese or whichever kind of unique set of circumstances that individual community might be facing. So I know, for example, in Scotland, you'll have kind of multi-ownership between kind of the outside kind of graveyard space and the actual building itself. So of course Plunkett's role is, where there is an idea, we will provide that practical help and support and that business support to help get the community business idea off the ground. But the alliance, through the alliance, will also connect you with those experts that have that knowledge and the expertise and the contacts and the specialist knowledge to help kind of marry together that partnership and to make sure that it works for everybody. So as you can see here are kind of a number of the logos of those that are involved. It's an absolutely fantastic network, huge amount of enthusiasm. So what we say is, if there is an idea, please come to Plunkett first, but we work so closely with the alliance that we make sure that they're aware of any inquiries that come through, and we can again kind of match make you to make sure that you are connected up with all the help and support that you need. So we launched that in 2018, and we have got a website which I can share again in the notes. So do have a look at the website as and when you can have a moment. On the website, there's a number of case studies as well, but a little bit more about the alliance and the support that we offer. I've already kind of rambled through this, but I'll just make sure that I cover the key points. So the benefits of co-locating a community business with a place of worship. First and foremost, we're seeing that kind of protection of the fabric of the building. It is about bringing communities together, sharing running costs. You know, it is, as you will all know, very costly to run a historic building and place of worship. So to have kind of reliable and significant contribution there can be really valuable. Strengthening the local congregation. So again, it can increase kind of people's connection with the place of worship as well as the wider community, and then it is about retaining that community hub. So the wider campaign really is open to every faith group, and also any faith building at any point. So if it's a redundant church space, then that can lend itself to community business, but also active places of worship, whether they're kind of a festival church or kind of full-time every week providing services. Actually, there is potential to embed a community business there. I'm going to come to two examples in a moment that illustrates both pointers, kind of both sets of situations. But what we want to say is a really open door. So any ideas, and please share them with Plunkett kind of earlier rather than later, and we can ensure you get the best possible support. We were absolutely delighted last year that actually we secured support from All Churches Trust Limited. They are fantastic funders and supporters of this campaign. However, their support is for active places of worship, which does include festival churches, and it's for faith faith buildings of Christian faith. So we have additional support and funding through all churches, which I say is absolutely brilliant. And what that looks like is for an initial group, that looks like a feasibility grant. So we've got grants of up to £5,000 to help groups look at the feasibility of embedding a community business in a place of worship. So that might be architectural fees, it might be planning fees, it could be those kind of basics to make sure to go towards making sure a building is able to house a community business as well. So it's a really, really flexible pot, but effectively, if it's looking at the feasibility and furthering that initiative, then it's nice and straightforward. So again, if there is anybody here that has an interest in finding out more about the grants, then again, please get in touch. Really straightforward process. We are big advocates of making it a straightforward application as much as we possibly can, obviously whilst meeting the criteria of our funders. But again, we welcome that conversation and we can guide you through that process. It also, the funding is also enabling us to give more business advice and expertise out to community groups. So that again will be accessing Plunkett's kind of help and support through our central helpline, and it will also be enabling us to resource our network of advisors to come out and work more closely as well. It will also be creating a set of resources again that will help inform and tackle those complexities around embedding a community business, co-locating a community business in a place of worship. It's running for 2 years. We have, obviously, as you can imagine, had some challenges thrown our way with COVID, because of course there's a huge amount of expectation and pressure on places of worship, that we have to be really sensitive about the right time in which community businesses might be open to co-locating a community business. But we have certainly kind of had inquiries, because on one hand, although COVID has obviously made life incredibly challenging, incredibly difficult, it's also renewed people's connection with communities. So on some groups we're seeing a bit of a kind of a slowdown and a bit of a pause, on others we're seeing it kind of spark that initial interest, and we're there ready to help and support various community groups. So I mentioned that we have got 2 examples I just want to share with you today. So the first is Grindleford Community Shop in Derbyshire, and I'll just get to my notes, which I've stapled in the wrong order. But Grindleford, it's a community shop in Derbyshire, and a really, really lovely example of the co-location of a community business in a place of active worship. So the church there provided space to a local community who had this idea to set up and run a small shop and cafe, and established in the vestry of the church. And we can see here the number of volunteers, and Sarah Batterby, the manager, who's on the right-hand side. So it's a wonderful project, established in 2014. It does provide a little shop, but also a coffee and cake stop for passers-by, and very popular with local cyclists. It has a network of volunteers, and works in kind of close collaboration with, obviously, the place of worship to make sure that it works for everybody and that are sensitive to each other's needs. There are 340 members of the community shop in the community, and they raised about 3,500 in community shares, and that initial funding would go towards, you know, stocking the shop and getting the kind of the EPOS till and any kind of fixtures and fittings that are needed. So again, a really, really positive impact on the local community. We've got several kind of short videos that we can share again following the event. Did have a slight tech issue because I wanted to share a little film with you from Grindleford, but I could not get it to work, and I thought rather than struggle on the spot, I would share the link with you for you to have a little cup of tea afterwards. The other example I wanted to share with you is Ilmington Community Shop and Cafe. So this was a closed church, and the community recognised there's an opportunity there to take it on as a community hub and provide a shop and cafe, and it's really quite substantial. So again, it's important to emphasise that community businesses come in all shapes and sizes, and they can fit in little corners or they can take on big spaces, and it really is what's kind of right for the community. But I do have a little film, rather than kind of go through share the words of Ilmington with you via me. We've got a little film here that we can share with you. So fingers crossed this all goes to plan, but do let me know if not. So hopefully you can both hear and see this. Oh.
There was a gap of about 3 years between the old shop closing and our shop opening, and all you would see were dog walkers around the village. Now people are coming here, they're walking around the village and coming here, and again, other people meeting people that belong.
Well, the origins of the shop were one that would be familiar to lots of community shops. We had a shop in the village, it closed. A lot of people were really quite concerned about that. We were very fortunate from our point of view. The former Roman Catholic Church came on the market, and the planning designation was that it should remain in community use. And one of the things that the community said was they want a cafe.
Suddenly they've got a whole new raft of people that they know and can call on for all sorts of help and friendship and support and all sorts of other things.
Although the church is not a listed building, it is A, very prominent in the landscape, and B, we felt it was respectful to look after and conserve as many of the features that were left. There is some of the stained glass that's remaining, we've kept that, and the extension of the cafe was specifically designed to make sure that we could conserve both the features of the building but also the character of the building.
We've got lots of local produce in the shop. We try to get as much as we can locally sourced, so our fruit and vegetables come from the next village over the hill here. Our bread comes from another neighbouring village. We've got things that are sourced directly from the village. We have Grumpy Frog cider, which is made in the village from apples grown in the village, so the contents of the bottle have never left the village. And we've got a lot of products that we've created ourselves as a community shop with our own logo on them, so jute shopping bags and the calendar every year and a mug with a picture and the logo on, all sorts of things like that. I think one of the greatest things is about bringing the community together, and that is one of the joys of this, and that so many people now feel a part of the community, even if they're just shopping here. You know, they stand in the front of the shop and chat and meet, and they come and meet one another in the cafe, and it's just bringing the community together.
There we go. Hopefully you managed to follow that okay. I tried to look on the chat to make sure there were no issues because I can't see you at the moment, but there were no alarm bells, but I think it did make the film stutter a little bit, so apologies for that. I've just included a couple of photos here as well. You can see on the day that we visited, they had some scaffolding repairs going on, but it's a good indication of how obviously community businesses invest in the fabric of the building. So you can see that from the outside, and a couple of just shots from the inside that you'll have got a nice feel from the film as well, though. But it really is a very, very beautiful building and beautiful location for a community asset, and it's much loved, and it's a very active community, and without doubt has helped bring them together. So I'm going to stop now because hopefully you've got lots of questions, and it would be nice to see you all again. But just to share with you as well, when the presentation comes around, a few links here. So we've got our better form of business reports. We have these for community shops and community pubs, and they are worth a little look if you want to familiarise yourself a little bit more with the community business model. It's a bit of a kind of state of the sector report for those two models. Gives you latest facts and figures, but it's a really, really great overview, and it's a nice accessible read. So it's not all text, lots of lovely pictures and little insights as well, so please do delve into that if you'd like to. There will be the link to the Places of Worship website, and also Crossing the Threshold, which is an incredible resource which talks about, it was first written in 2012, it's been since updated, but is around those kind of essential advice and support on setting up a community business in a place of worship and those key considerations. So if this is sparking ideas, please do have a look at that and get in touch. And you can see there both our kind of general email address, but also mine directly. So if you'd like to have a chat about the campaign in more detail, if you're going to mull this over and think you've got an idea, then we'll be delighted to hear from you, both the central team and myself. So feel free to contact either or both. So I will stop now. I'm going to stop sharing, and hopefully you're all still there.
We're here. Thank you very much, Harriet. That was fantastic. And I have to say, I was kind of scribbling down notes as there were so many things that came from that. And I think one of the things that just really struck me when you were talking just generally about community businesses and what Plunkett does is just that kind of far-reaching community impact. That's exactly what churches were for originally, and that's what we want them to be still. And I think actually adapting church buildings for different uses is just how these buildings can continue to be that kind of hub of people and support, and where you go for a chat, where you go to connect with other people, reduce isolation, all that sort of thing. I was reading during the pandemic about a community shop that just had a chair just during the pandemic and just said, if you need to come sit, if you need to come speak to someone, whoever sits in this chair will get a cup of tea. Yeah. And if you want to have a chat, you can have a chat, but you don't have to. And that sort of thing, you just kind of think, oh, I could see
yes.
buildings, all these places providing that. And I think when you said imagination is the limit, that's another thing that I wanted to kind of get across today, is that, you know, really when you think about it, these buildings can be used for anything. And that's what's really exciting. Someone mentioned to me a while ago about using their church as a badminton court. And I think a number of people within the group and their committee went, oh no, terrifying. Well, actually, in some ways, why not? Why not a badminton court? And again, it would be surface level. It wouldn't damage the building. It would get people in. It would make some money, and it could still be used for other things. So just, I think that's something to get across today, is just keep in mind, actually, it could be anything that you want it to be. And in a lot of cases, you could still use the space for worship too when you wanted to. So yeah, lots of really interesting things.